Daphne here from STEAM Design Lab. In this video, I'll show you one of two methods to add decorative elements to your structure. The first method involves adding your decorative elements to a newspaper cover. Start by creating a little template of the area that you want to cover. My structure is laying on this table so that you can see how I'm doing this, but you could do this with your structure standing up. Now you can set your structure aside and work just on the newspaper overlay. Here you'll see me trimming some of my newspaper tubes to create a border around the edge of my area. Now if you watched the first video, these are single layer tubes and I did not glue the edges on them. Because of that, if I just started cutting the tubes, they would just unravel. So to prevent that, I'm marking the tube where I want to cut it. Then I'm applying a little bit of tape right on top of that mark before I cut. That prevents the tube from unraveling and allows me to use the entire tube instead of just a little piece of it. Next, I'll glue those little cut sections of tube down to my paper. Now you can squeeze the glue directly from the tube, or you can apply it from a little cap using a popsicle stick. Use the method that's easiest for you. Now that you've created a nice border, you can start to lay out your decorative elements. Here you're seeing me lay out the 3 spirals I made in the previous video. I'm also adding a round fan that I made, and you'll see me add some little cut pieces of tube later on as well. All you need to do is add the glue to the underside of your decorative elements, press them onto the cover, and wait for them to dry. That's about it. Here you'll see me putting a roll of tape on top of my elements just to keep them flat as they dry. You can really put anything on top of them if you feel like you need a little bit of extra weight on there. Once again, I'll be using some of my leftover tubes. I'm marking where I want to cut them. I'm applying a little bit of tape right over the mark so that it covers both sides. And then I'm cutting and checking to make sure it fits. Now I'm gluing down those little pieces. This time I'm using a little paintbrush to apply my glue. If you do decide to use a paintbrush, make sure you're not using one of your good brushes because the glue tends to dry very quickly and can ruin a brush. If you're adding an element like this fan, it's a little tricky, but you're going to need to try to apply glue anywhere that the fan is touching that paper. The final step will be attaching your decorative cover to your structure. Here you can see I trimmed my piece so that the edges have little tabs just on the left and the right. Now I could tape that directly to my structure, but I'm going to create a cover that wraps all the way around. And to do this, I'm going to take another piece of plain paper and wrap it around the back side of my structure. I'm using a Sharpie to mark along those supports. Those are the same supports that I used when I marked the front of my decorative cover. So that I know when I'm putting those two pieces together, the areas where I mark those black lines should line up. I've taken that template back to my work table and I'm folding along those lines because that's where it'll fold when it sits on top of my structure. I'm going to trim some of that extra paper on the edges. the back templates together to get an idea of how they're going to line up. Now, the black line that I drew is actually supposed to line up with that tube that I glued on the edge of my triangle on the front of my structure, and you'll see how I line that up when I do the gluing. This a little bit quicker, I'm adding a line of tape along that edge because I don't want to have to wait for that to dry. I'm going to fold this over so you can see how this will look when it's sitting on top of the structure, but I'm not going to complete that piece until I actually move it over on top of the structure. For now, I'm applying tape to 1/2, just the front side of that cover. Step is just installing the cover onto my structure. And here's how it looks when it's all done. I hope this was helpful. Happy innovating!